Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Mental Health Matters with your host, Dr. Matt Gloviak. As always, thank you very much for tuning in to the different episodes. So, today we're going to talk about the ABCs of counseling. So, this is a very simple method that we're going to talk about, which is one that has been tried and true over the years, which many clinicians actually utilize. And I think some of you may think through this. However, once we have an awareness of exactly what it is that's going on when we behave in certain ways, we're able to take a step back and actually control what it is that's going on. So, one of the things as a clinician that I often find when I'm working with clients is that, they'll engage in some type of action and have no idea about any of the mechanisms that occur between the action and what their thought process was or anything that's underlining. So, for instance, I have one client who I used to see when I was working with individuals with opioid use disorder at the methadone clinic, and we were talking about the recovery process. And, I was speaking with him about relapse and some of the dangers with relapse that go on, and really trying to get an idea as to where his head is at every single time he goes through and he has, a relapse episode. And remembering quite specifically, he shared with me, well, over this weekend, what happened is that one of my old drug buddies gave me a call, and he said that he got some good stuff. And the next thing you knew, I just drove right on over to his place, got it, and ended up using. And here I am talking to you about it now. And I'm like, all right, so let's try to break this down a little bit further. So you ended up getting a phone call from your drug buddy, and you just ended up going out there and you just used it. Yes. Like, well, can you describe everything that went on in between? Well, I was on autopilot. I have absolutely no idea what happened in between. I'm like, okay, so you got the phone call, you ended up driving all the way out there, and that was just it. You ended up doing it. It was autopilot. Yes, there was no thought that went into it whatsoever. And I was like, okay, let's break this down a little bit for me. So you got the phone call from your drug buddy. Now remember, you're supposed to block individuals who are those who can encourage you to use. You're supposed to change your phone number. He had your phone number. He wasn't blocked. So that was problem number one that we had here. Number two, you're telling me that after he told you he had the good stuff, that your mind went directly to a place of using. Didn't you have any strategy of trying to talk yourself down or anything like that from it? And we talked about that a little bit further. Next up, so I know that your parents have your car keys because they don't want you driving because they figure these types of things happen. So how'd you end up getting the car keys? Oh, well, I ended up using the safe code. Okay, so you ended up finding the safe code, going in the safe, grabbing the keys. Yet another opportunity for you to stop yourself after you could have talked yourself out of it. So you physically went in there and got it. Yes, okay. Then you went out the door, you started to drive. How far away is this guy from you? Oh, about an hour and a half. Okay, so for the hour and a half that you're driving to get over to this location with the other, to meet your friend, did any thoughts go through your head? No, they didn't go through my head. I just didn't, like I said, I was on autopilot. Okay, well, why don't we be honest with one another? Were they positive types of thoughts that were going on? Like, this could be really fun. I haven't seen him in a while. I just want to blow off steam. I've been doing well for a while. Any of those thoughts? Well, I suppose that maybe they did. Okay, and when you actually got to it and you saw it, was there anything trying to stop you then? Well, I knew that it would be bad, but I just decided to go forward. So I was like, okay, so let's kind of backtrack here from the very beginning. I named about 15 different points from you from start to finish of getting the call where you could have stopped yourself and you didn't, correct? Yeah, well, that's correct. Okay. The reason I broke this down with you is because I wanted you to recognize that you had 15 opportunities between getting that phone call, probably even more than 15 opportunities, between getting the phone call and actually going and doing it, and it ended up happening. You just said it was autopilot. It's so important for you to be able to break down what it is that's going on so we can learn for moving forward to not have this relapse again. And we're going to take step by step every inch of the way where you could have done something different, or we're going to try to make it a little bit better. Take a look at anger management, for instance, completely different type of example. I'll have individuals who come in, they're referred by the state of Illinois to come see us, for anger management type issues. So, client comes in, like, what brings you here today? They say I have an anger problem and, I don't feel like I do. I'm just trying to go through these steps. I need to get through it. So here I am meeting with you. I'm like, okay, well, can you describe the instance, the incident of what ended up happening? Well, I was there and there was this coworker and the guy was getting under my skin. He ended up giving me a dirty look, and I ended up punching him in the face. I'm like, okay. So what type of thoughts went in your head between him getting under your skin, and you punching him in the face? Well, I didn't feel good about it and just immediately punched him in the face. There was really no thought process that went into that. Like, well, again, this isn't something that's so cut and dry. There's a lot of different things that go into it. It's not that often that we just impulsively go and punch somebody in the face. And yes, some people do have struggles with impulse control and so on. However, there is a thought process that goes into it, and there is some history that actually goes into it that we need to be able to consider here. So one of the things that's really important that we try to work with our clients, and this is derived from Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, REBT, by Albert Ellis. And we talk about the ABCs of thought process restructuring. So being able to take a look at an event for what it is and be able to take a look at it a little bit differently. So now I'm going to cut over to my handy little board here that we've got. And notice how since the last episode I actually made sure to have everything written down nicely, and I'm not going to write on it again because we saw how poorly that turned out. So let's go back and take a look here at the first incident that we had here, activating event. So if I go back to the first example I shared with the individual who ended up going out with his drug buddy, we take a look at the activating event would be receiving the phone call from his drug buddy. That's it. So that was the activating event. Okay, so what is the belief that we had here? Well, the belief that he had was that, my drug buddy, he's my friend. I have a good time when I'm with him. If I use drugs, I'm going to feel really great, and it's something I haven't done in a while. So my belief is that I'm going to have a good time. So ultimately, what ended up coming of the consequence is that he ended up using. So client ended up using, phone call, I'll have a good time, client ended up using. Now, what I do when you come into a counseling session to see me, and what many other clinicians are going to do as well, is we're going to go through and we're going to try to dispute that. Now, I gave you a pretty solid example in terms of the different things that we were able to do to try to dispute that. Number one, you're in recovery. Even though you had a slip up here over the weekend, you ended up coming into the session, you were on time, you ended up telling me about it. It seems as though you have some guilt or remorse for it. So, another consequence that came out of that now is that you feel guilty, you threw off your recovery, and so on. So how can we dispute this a little bit differently? Well, I had 6 months sober, now I'm starting back on day one, that's a reason not to use. Number two, I've been getting along really well with my other friends. This other guy only wants to spend time with me to end up using substances. It's a problem. That's another thing. By sneaking out of the house, I ended up disappointing my parents. They really put a lot of faith in me and have been proud with my recovery efforts, so there was that. I'm having to sit here and talk to you about it right now, and I don't really feel that great about it, but I know you're somebody I can speak to about it. So all these different types of things are disputing, that belief that goes back to the entire thought of if I use, I'll have fun, it'll be great, and we're going to have a good time with this information that I threw off my recovery, my parents are disappointed, I'm disappointed in myself, I have to start this over again. And with that, if you would have followed that moving forward, we can have what we see being a new effect. So if any point along the 15 steps of the way that we went and broke down, if you would have thought with the new thoughts, I'm throwing off my recovery, I shouldn't do this, I'll be disappointed in myself, family will be disappointed in me, and so on, the new effect that can come out of this is going to be you didn't use, maybe go to a meeting, you didn't slip up, now you're 6 months and 1 day sober, and we can talk about the experience without you having had that slip up. That's what we've got right there. Going back to the other example that I had here with anger management and an individual, the guy was getting under my nerves. It was just rubbing me the wrong way. I saw red, I punched him here in the face, and I ended up having to come here to see you. So activating event. Starting from the beginning, the gentleman was just getting under my nerves. Now, getting under my nerves, I want to know something more specific. In what way was this gentleman getting under your nerves? Well, he was giving me dirty looks. There's a long history of him not getting his work done. And the guy name calls to me. He says things about me to other people. He's a show-off, thinks he's better than I am. He ended up getting the promotion that I was supposed to get. Somehow he got it. He's here many years later. It just, the whole thing's annoying. Okay, so getting, again, the activating event, what was it? Getting under your getting under your skin. Well, okay, the activating event was he gave me a dirty look. Okay, so dirty look led to the belief, based off all the things that you just told me, this guy is somebody who's your competition. This guy is somebody who's out to get you. This guy is somebody who got a promotion he didn't deserve, and he's intentionally trying to do this stuff to upset you. So the consequence was you punched him in the face. And now you're here seeing me, and you got reprimanded at work. So because of that thought process we had here, we ended up having those consequences. Now, as we sit here and break it down in terms of disputing it, what are some things that we could have done differently to avoid this type of situation? Number one, do you sit next to him at work? Well, no, he's actually on the opposite side of the office, okay? During the situation when, you got under your skin, you punched him in the face, did you have to be next to him? Well, no, I kind of walked into his area of the office. Okay, so you didn't necessarily need to walk over there. Okay. So disputing it, so you didn't have to actually walk to the opposite end of the office to be next to this individual. Kind of went out of your way, it sounds, to be in his approximate location. All right. Have you ever spoken to human resources about this individual, or spoken to your boss about the things that you're dealing with him speaking to you about, speaking about you to your friends and other people, and these comments are going on in the background? Well, no, I haven't done that. I've kept it to myself. Okay, something else that you could have done here. Have you spoken to anybody about it? No. Have you spoken to him about it? No. Okay. So that was something that we really could have considered here. How about you? You talked a lot about not getting that promotion you felt like you deserved. And he just came in the door, somebody with less seniority than you got the position you thought you could have. What types of things, what were you feeling when it went into that? Well, I felt like I was undervalued. I felt like I was unappreciated. I felt like maybe I'm not as good of a worker as perhaps he is. I feel like I'm going to be stuck in this job for the rest of my life without any promotion. I've been here 20 years and so on. So kind of losing a lot of my self-confidence and feeling down on myself. Okay, so another negative belief that you had here. So it was about yourself, about this guy who's picking on you and so on. So what if we actually worked on that? We built your self-esteem, found a way to be able to talk through your problems, find a way, for you to be able to avoid this individual at work without getting into issues. Now, if you do, feel that you're undervalued at your job, perhaps we can look into different job opportunities. We could, at a different place of employment. We could speak with your boss about this directly, to see what type of other opportunities there are. If we did these different types of things, what could that lead to? A new effect of, the gentleman, again, rubs you the wrong way. Instead of punching him in the face, you're able to just walk the other way, or you can make a comment that says, okay, I'm not dealing with this today, could have reported it and so on, and you probably wouldn't have gotten in trouble in work, and you wouldn't be here with me talking about this today. And these are the things that we have to take a look at here. Now, all this stuff is always easier said than done. I always talk about in terms of stressors and trying to alleviate stress, the best thing to do is to be able to problem solve. So for instance, if you're concerned about weight, try to figure out a way to lose weight. If you're concerned about money, try to figure out a way to save better, make more money, have a better budget here. If you're concerned about your job and feeling undervalued, perhaps, again, have that conversation with the employer, maybe seek employment somewhere else, work on education, experience, and so on. You're having an issue in a relationship, again, talk about it. If the relationship is toxic, perhaps you have to set boundaries and end that relationship. This is going to be the most appropriate way to be able to work through things, and being direct about it and true with yourself, that usually helps alleviate the problem. Now, there are also going to be some things that may be outside of our control that, like we talked about, the loss of a loved one, some catastrophic natural type of event, some type of terrorist attack. These types of things are completely out of our control. Now, when they happen, we have to work on the emotional coping aspect of what we have going on. So, recognizing that what happened was terrible. However, I can pick up the pieces, I can move forward, and I will continue to live a happy, healthy life. I will recognize that this is going to take some time, but this is what I can do to do it and continue to work through the grieving process, have the appropriate support around you. Also, there's ways that we can do both. problem solving and emotionally coping. And that's going to be the 1-2 combo that we really want to have there, because then we made the problem better and actually work through it emotionally, and we can get to that much better place. And with that being said, if we do those types of strategies, these activating events that we have, regardless of how difficult they may be, and I know that situations can be extremely difficult and sometimes it's hard to respond in an appropriate, rational manner. However, we do still have a choice with these types of situations and how we have to respond. I do want to take a moment to talk about beliefs. Now, beliefs are one of those things that are very, very built into us. They're very ground in, from the very beginning of our life. Generally, when we are raised in a household, whether it's a positive, happy, healthy household, or it's one that's a negative household where there's neglect, abuse, and mental illness, and substance use, and so on, what you're presented with as you're growing up is something that can be very ground into you. Now, we have certain types of beliefs that go in, whether they're ones that are healthy and appropriate or they're ones that are very unhealthy and inappropriate. They really start to shape the way that we view the world, the way that we see different things. They really start to shape the way that we respond to what we have that's going on. And as we know, the younger you are, the more influenced you are by these different types of things, especially when they're the individuals who are supposed to be your role models, the ones you look up to, the people who you're around all the time. So when you have that, your thought process goes around is shaped by these types of beliefs that we have here. So let's suppose, and we grow up in a household that's very racist, and you have a parent who's racist, makes racial comments to other people as they're walking down the street, doesn't want you dating other people or having friends from a different race, and this type of thing gets ground into your head. It's very likely that you're going to be an individual who sees the world in that way. So what would be some of the consequences of that type of belief you have, that you're from the superior culture and that everyone else who's not like you doesn't fit in and shouldn't be associated with? Well, you might find yourself in situations where you can't work with people from different ethnicities. You might find yourself making derogatory comments. You might find yourself getting in physical altercations. And trying to change this can take a lot of work. Another one that we could see, and it oftentimes happens, whether it's in the household or it can be the effect that students get from teachers, is the belief that I'm not good enough in school. You see a student didn't do well on a test, and that could be for a variety of different reasons. Maybe the student isn't quite as intelligent as the other kids. Maybe that child needs some accommodations that were not necessarily provided or even unknown that they were necessary. Maybe the child's dealing with some type of particular difficulty at home where, parents were fighting or didn't make it home that night, and the child stayed up all night and didn't get any sleep. Maybe the parents couldn't afford to pay for, the computer that was necessary or the software that goes with it, or even a textbook for that matter. And there's all these different reasons that the child came into the test feeling unprepared and ended up failing it. And then we have the instructor who gives back, you got the big F, write the big F in the red marker, hands it to the student, and makes a comment to the effect of, wow, you really bit the big one on this one. Absolutely terrible. I'm disappointed in you. And then what ends up happening with that is the child starts to take a look and say, okay, I'm not good enough. I'm stupid. I'm not smart enough. I can't do this type of thing. And then again, it leads to all these different types of problems along the ABCDEs that we have here. And this is a very common case I work with a lot of different clients here. So, for instance, I may have an adolescent who's now 14 years old, who's gone through an entire life of being told he's not good enough and you're always going to fail and so on. So, activating event. The child gets invited to be in some type of study group with some other peers. Adolescent comes in, I really like these guys, they're really great, we have a lot of fun when we're playing sports and video games and so on. I was invited to be able to join their study group. However, my belief is that I'm not good enough. I want them to be my friends. I don't want them to see that I'm not as intelligent as they are. So I ended up saying no and not being a part of the study group. So now, they're hanging out. they're becoming even closer. I'm kind of left out in this and I'm feeling a little bit jealous. I'm a little bit upset with it. Now we could take a look here and dispute that entire belief we have here and state that, okay, well, let's take a look at the past. You've made it to this point, you're in the appropriate grade of where you're supposed to be. You haven't failed any classes. Okay, you're getting C's, you've had some D's, but there's also been B's and A's in there as well. Have you actually reached out for the appropriate support you need? Well, no, I've always been afraid of my teacher and the way the teacher will look at me. We can't afford a tutor. My parents haven't helped me out with anything there. So, I haven't really, I haven't done anything with that. Okay. So you admittedly haven't received the type of support that you need to get to a better place. And all of us need support with something. We're not all great at everything we do. Even, geniuses we see, the leading athletes and so on, they're not great at everything they do. And maybe academics are one of the areas where you're finding yourself struggling. So, maybe you could receive a little bit of that support. Well, maybe if I did receive their support, things could be a bit different here. Okay, so we disputed that. It's not necessarily that you're not good enough or you're stupid or anything like that. You're not going to be successful. But the issue that we have here is that you never received the type of support that you needed. So let's try to go through, dispute that belief in that I'm an individual who's competent, who hasn't received the appropriate amount of support I need. And let's accept that invitation to go into the study group and the new effect. Join the study group around a bunch of peers who are fully supportive, able to help work through the homework and so on. And now here I am studying for the test, raising my grades to B's and A's, and getting to that appropriate place. And then what we'll see here is over time, we're going to ultimately be able to change that belief, and as there's more, positive reinforcement through receiving the B's and A's and the accolades from the teachers and the support from the friends, and seeing that, wow, I am a competent individual, that indeed, you are that, and that belief is not necessarily correct. So it's really important to think about this type of thing. One of the things I absolutely love about this, and I talked about REBT being the psychology theory with this. There's another one called cognitive behavioral therapy, developed in 1965 by Aaron Beck, and it was actually developed as a way to be able to treat depression. So one of the things that we'd seen back then is really, how does talk therapy work? A lot of the Sigmund Freud stuff, psychotherapy, laying on the couch talking about the past and subconscious thoughts. Well, what Aaron Beck thought is we can sit here and work with an individual in the present, go to the past as we kind of need to, but really be able to break down the things that we've got going on, here in the moment. And he talks about a lot of these same types of things that we see here. But what I love about this theory is that it's something that works with just about anybody. Let's think about it. Cognitive. All of us are individuals who think. We have thoughts in our head. Granted, some of the thoughts we have are healthier than other thoughts. However, we do have thoughts, that little voice in your head that's going on. Emotions. All of us emote. We have feelings. Now, some of us are certainly more emotionally intelligent and more in tune with emotions than other people. And women, you got a leg up on it. It's just genetically in the way you're raised, society. You do get a little bit better than men. So ones like myself had to be taught these things. But we do have emotions that are going on. And the thing that we recognize, especially when we take a look in the brain system, we talk about prefrontal cortex being the moral judgment center, and then we have the limbic system, which is controlled by our emotions and that. And some of these emotions that we have are automatic. It's a chemical type of reaction. Once that limbic system gets activated to the point of having a strong emotional response, that's when we can't think clearly. The prefrontal cortex is thrown off, judgment's thrown off, and then we start to react on the emotions instead of the more appropriate way we should have behaved. Hence, the individual came in with the anger management problem for punching the guy at work. Instead of taking a step back and rationally thinking through all the consequences that could have happened, emotions kicked in. It was based off the beliefs that we had here before. So again, we all think, we all feel, and we all have varying degrees of different types of physical reactions that we have. We can all choose the way that we respond to things. So we are active participants in our world. We interrelate with other people, and very important that we do keep that in mind here. So when we take a look at that whole aspect of things too, especially when I have a client who comes in who may not be very emotionally aware of everything that's going on, and we could go back to the physiology of things. So generally the way your body feels physiologically ties into the way that you're feeling emotionally. One of the easiest ones to be able to spot is that pit in the bottom of your stomach. When you're feeling down, you're feeling in the dumps, you might have a bit of a depressed type of mood. But then, when your heart starts racing a little bit, you're feeling very energetic, your thoughts are racing, you get the butterflies in your stomach, you may feel elated, enthusiastic, and so on. So one of the things that we can do, especially if you're somebody who's most familiar with the mad, glad, happy, sad, and not necessarily in tune with emotions, we can always start off with considering, well, what am I feeling here in the moment? So if I were to go back to the situation where I had the individual with the anger management issue, and he couldn't tell me exactly how he was feeling and what his beliefs were, I asked, well, what was your physiological response when the individual was getting under your skin? Well, hands were shaking, heart was pounding, couldn't think clearly, I was seeing red, I was gritting my teeth, and so on. And then boom, it happened. And I would next ask the question, well, when you start to feel these types of physiological symptoms, is that something that feels good or does it feel bad to you? Well, okay, it doesn't feel good. It feels pretty bad. So, that's probably an indication then that you're having these physiological symptoms. They feel bad, that you're in a threatening type of situation. And when you're in a threatening type of situation, the best thing to do, as appropriate, especially in a situation like this, is to take a step back. Same thing that we can have here as well with the individual I opened up with, discussing the steps going up to a relapse, physiological responses. My heart was pounding. I couldn't concentrate on anything but acquiring the drug. Hands were shaking. I started sweating a bit because I just kept anticipating it. My stomach was getting in knots. Again, that's an indication to you that you're having a physical craving right now, and that's not where you want to be while you're in the middle of this recovery. So really trying to be in tune with all these different types of things, something simple that you can do in your everyday life, and I strongly encourage each of you to do those. And I can even go into some examples, but I'll share for a later episode because I know I'm running a bit short on time here. But I also use this strategy walking through different things that happen with couples. For instance, activating event. So a wife gets upset, husband didn't wash the dishes. So activating event, dishes weren't washed. Belief, well, he never helps me with any of the household stuff. He thinks he's better than me. This is beneath him. Consequence, we get into a huge fight. Blow up on him for not doing the dishes. This is it. However, dispute, let's really take a look back. What types of things has he helped with? Has he done the dishes in the past? Well, yeah, he does them about half the time. What other household chores does he do? Well, he takes out the trash, he helps with the lawn, does this. Okay. Did he work that day? Yes, he worked that day. Okay. Was it a stressful day? Oh, well, maybe. Okay, how about with the kids? Does he help with the kids? Yes, he comes home and he was doing stuff for the kids. Aha, actually, when he came home, their place was a huge mess. He had to clean up the mess that was going on with the kids, so he took care of that, and he wasn't able to get to actually take care of the dishes. Oh, so now that you know that he had a stressful day, he's done these things in the past, and he was trying to tend to the kids, now we can see that it wasn't him just trying to berate you or think he's better than or intentionally ignore your request, but he had other things that were coming up, and it wasn't so much of a situation being about you, but about the situation and that. So the new effect is, okay, you didn't do the dishes, I wish you would have done it. Can you do them a little bit later, or I can step in and do it for you, and we can completely avoid that type of fight. Again, very simply laid out there for you. I encourage you to look into this further. If you do want to do your own research on it online, again, like I said, you could take a look at Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy by Albert Ellis, or take a look at Cognitive Behavioral Therapy by Aaron Beck. But with that, we're running out of time here. So as always, thank you for being in tune with this episode. If you have any questions, comments, feedbacks, or anything you'd like to share, please send an email to dr.mgloviak@gmail.com, and also visit our Facebook and YouTube sites here. Always appreciate the thumb up, like, positive comments, and shares. Again, thank you so much, and I wish you a happy new year.